UDOT Main Street striping plan. Jeremy can introduce this. And if Jared and Robert, if they have any questions for them or if they have any input, they can jump in on that.
Okay, I think we've had some discussion, but it's been quite a while on our request to UDOT. We really had a couple of issues that we were trying to address. One of them is safety at Main and Center Street. The other is safety at 300 South Main Street at the school crosswalk. And then we've also, in addition to that, we're talking about some crosswalks across Main Street in different places. And so we have Jared Beard and Robert Dowell from UDOT here with us, and they put together this, had commissioned this study by Hales Engineering to discuss all of these different possibilities. One of the things that we had asked them to look at was a stoplight at Main and Center Street. We also asked them to look at additional crosswalk signage at 300 South. So I hope everybody at least read the executive summary, but the idea here is we didn't meet the warrants for a stoplight at Main and Center Street, which is how they measure whether it's feasible. They did have some good recommendations, however, for some overhead signage with the overhead assembly at Main and Center Street, so we can put some better signs. This is what the new signs would look like. Edge of the Cedar State Park, USU Blending, a turn to Bluff, 191 would be a little bit more prominent, and some adjustments there to the signage. And they've also recommended what they call a road diet. Let me see if I can quickly find the best explanation for the road diet, which would be taking our road from 4 lanes to 3 lanes through town. So we would have 1 lane of traffic each direction with a turn lane all the way through from 200 north, just north of Maverick, to 500 south at the city park. So they went out, they put some markings on the road, and what we're looking at tonight is whether or not we'd like to do that 3-lane roadway instead of the 4-lane.
There you go, right there, Jeremy.
Is that one you want?
That one, yeah, that shows the existing cross section today with the 4 lanes, and then if you go just beneath that, it shows the 3-lane proposed cross section.
Why don't you go ahead and explain that for us?
And I'd like to jump in, though, just a second and just make a clarification that, there's a little bit of an error in what was requested, what's stated that what was requested by the city. It states that we were requesting a traffic light, and we actually weren't. We said that, but that's not what matches our minutes and our discussion. Is that right, Jeremy?
Logan and I had some discussion about this. We did approve the letter, but there was
changes to that didn't apparently make it in the letter, right?
We approved the letter just the way we sent it, but there was some question as to whether we were requesting a stoplight or requesting them to look into a stoplight.
Yeah. So the discussion was that we wanted it to be evaluated. It wasn't the official position of the city that we wanted a stoplight necessarily. It was we wanted it evaluated though, and that's where we ended with the discussion, which is also in the minutes, but the letter may not reflect what actually happened there. So I just want to make a point of clarification there as to the history of this.
I that's how I read that. That's how I felt that too. A lot of people have favored a stop sign or stop light, but we just asked for a broad evaluation of the situation and some options for solutions. When the road diet, and we may have a little more discussion on that, but when the 3-lane was initially thrown out months and months ago as a possible idea, I started doing all my driving on Main Street, which is a lot, thinking about how that would affect things. My initial reaction was, ooh, I don't want to give up lanes. It feels like you're going backwards. But the more that I drove that and contemplated how it would flow, the more I liked it, partly because you have a wider shoulder and the way we're able to turn into mid-block businesses, there were several things that I started to like about that. And then when the study came out, it kind of shored me up on the idea that might not be a bad idea. But I would say the improvement in the signage alone, with or without a change in the striping, may solve the problem.
So as I understand the benefits, I mean, you can see here for the adjustment right now, currently we have about a 6-foot shoulder, which makes the parking quite tight, especially when you have a wider vehicle, semi-truck or an RV. Then we have the travel lanes. The new adjustment would give an 11-foot shoulder and a 14-foot median in the middle. It would also help with the safety for the kids crossing the street on 300 South, because we would have 2 lanes of traffic instead of 4. So that creates some safety. The downside is we would have one travel lane instead of 2. So there would be times you get behind a slower vehicle and go right around it. I think that's probably the biggest issue. You do see here the capacity. The capacity of the 3 lane is 13 to 18,000 vehicles a day. The 4 lane is 22 to 26,000 vehicles a day. We're currently about 3,200 vehicles a day. So we still have plenty of capacity for the next foreseeable future, even at a 3 lane road. Anything else you wanted to add there, Jared or Robert?
Yeah, I guess if you go to the previous page, Jeremy, it does kind of have some bullet points as to pros and cons of the 3 lane versus the 4 lane. And I think you hit most of them. Safety is our primary concern with the 3 lane section. And when the volumes of traffic are like they are in Blanding, they're fairly low, from between 3,000 and 5,000 vehicles per day, depending on what time of year. With those volumes of traffic, we're really most concerned with improving safety. You know, when in other studies that they've looked at these things, when you go from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, we've seen this is an FHWA study, but between 19 and 47% reduction in crashes. And that's primarily because you eliminate a lot of rear end collisions, because now the left turn movements can get out of that travel lane. They can get out of the way. They have their own lane to go into. So there aren't near as many rear end collisions. The other huge safety advantage to me is pedestrians. I'm sure you've all seen the scary situation where someone's waiting to cross the road, and you have 2 cars coming together, and one person will see the pedestrian and slow down, and the other one just doesn't see him at all and continues on through. This kind of helps eliminate that situation, because you don't have those 2 cars next to each other and blocking each other's views. So from UDOT standpoint, it really is primarily safety. It also improves the parking, as you mentioned earlier. Now the doors won't be swinging out into a live lane of traffic. You've got actual room there to park a vehicle. One thing that Robert wanted to mention, if you go down to the following page on the cross sections, right there, it does give you an option, and this is, from my standpoint, completely up to the city if we go this route. We could stripe a bike lane on the shoulder. Now, Robert, do you want to explain what you showed them?
You bet. The information there on the alternate side treatment is not correct. So I striped it, both scenarios. If you saw it there in front of the tire shop, this scenario here with the 14, 12, 11 scenario, and then the one with the bike lane that I striped out there that I marked had a 12-foot median, and I took that extra foot on each side and added it to the shoulder. So we have an 8-foot parking and essentially a 4-foot bike lane, but it says 3 foot with a 1-foot buffer, and we would stripe it with the 1-foot buffer and then a 3-foot gap there, but still gives you that, essentially that 12-foot, 11-foot shoulder there for people to maneuver in and out of that through lane. But you have both scenarios marked out there on your main street.
So one of the things that brings this to light right now is UDOT is planning to do a chip seal project through this section of Main Street this year. So is the appropriate time to restripe things when they re-chip seal. And it would stay that way for approximately 7 years. That's when you have your next chip seal project plan. for that same stretch of road. So they're really looking for us to help them make a decision. But am I correct in understanding your recommendation is to do this second scenario, and you don't really have a preference on whether we leave the shoulder 11, 12 feet or whether we put in the bike lane, but your preference is to go to a 3-lane road, is that correct?
That's correct. We would not use that alternate site treatment as shown in this diagram. We would go with the two scenarios, and yeah, they're very, very similar in nature. A couple other things that from a traffic and safety perspective, the wider shoulder allows us to qualify for overhead mast arms at the school crossing. So instead of having the side mount school crossings, it would give us a wide enough shoulder that actually qualifies us for overhead there.
That's at 300 south?
Yeah, 300, yeah.
And I think we do have.
So I'd like some explanation on that. That seems strange to me that that doesn't affect the number of people that would go across the streets. There's the potential hazard, but yet the lanes is what dictates whether that type of a signal is warranted. Can you explain that? That seems strange.
It's based on shoulder width. I can't tell you essentially all the logic behind it. Shoulders less than 12 feet, and we would count the 2-foot gutter in ours to give us that, but less than that doesn't qualify. It's on a point basis, and when you have 12 feet or greater shoulder width, then because of the distance from the traveled lane to the side of the road that's the biggest issue there. So when the side of your road's close to the edge of the traveled lane, 6 feet like you have, then they feel like that's close enough, so it doesn't give you that additional point. That's just one of the criteria. But we, in your scenario, if we had the 12-foot, it would, because of the other things that are contributing there, it would qualify you. It's not the only contributing factor, but it is in this case, the critical factor that we're missing.
So that's to say we couldn't have it. We can all sit here and acknowledge that this would be improve the safety, but the answer would be no, we can't have that.
If you left it the way it is, we would work hard to justify it, but it's much easier justified based on the 12-foot shoulder. I wouldn't say we couldn't justify it. I justified it in Salina, and they had 8-foot shoulders there, but with the amount of truck traffic, we were able to, with Robinson's and Barney's using their main street like they do, we were able to justify it based on that. But I mean, we would work that, if you declined the 3-lane, wasn't to say that it couldn't happen. Just saying it would be easier if we had the wider shoulders.
And again, so I understand this process is justified to who? Who's the ultimate say-so here?
Well, there's a policy that we have, and it's our Salt Lake office, Chief of Traffic and Safety, gentleman up there that we, if there's a couple of people that we work through up there on these types of scenarios. To try to justify things outside the realm of what we have. And I would say the same thing the same thing regarding a traffic signal at the existing 4-way stop. We were planning on counting that later on this summer when we felt like we were going to get highest traffic volumes. To try to justify that. If it didn't qualify and it was the city's desire, we would continue to pursue that. But it wouldn't be guaranteed that it could happen.
Okay, so that would be based on more of the feeling that that's the city's desire to have that there?
That, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that if the city was opposed to a traffic signal, we probably wouldn't count it. We wouldn't even attempt to count it.
Okay, and that was my comment earlier. I mean, that was just factual in the early discussions, is that we didn't request, the city did not approve requesting one. Is that?
Logan, I'm disagreeing with you. I think that it's something we may have to take to a vote, because I'm open to improved signage, and I just want our residents to be safe. And yeah. I don't feel like they're safe right now. So if that means bringing in a traffic light, then that's what I would like to see done. But I'm open to other options as well.
And that's what I'm saying, Cheryl, is that's what we all said before, is if that's what is determined that makes things safer, then yes. But it wasn't that, hey, our objective is a traffic light. Our objective was, hey, we want to look at what would make them safer. That's my point.
You know what? Can I jump in and just add one item with the main intersection there in town? If we go to this 3-lane section, and Jeremy, if you can page down, I think it's down just 1 or 2 pages, there's a figure that kind of shows how that would lay out. It's on page 14. Maybe, oh, we've probably gone past it.
It's up above.
It's up above, sorry, page 14. But one of the things that the 3-lane section does is when you come to that intersection, each movement has its own lane. So if you're turning left, right there you go. So if you're turning left, you have a turn pocket to pull into. Everybody knows you're going left. If you're going right, you pull into the right turn pocket. Everybody knows you're going right. If you're going straight through, every movement has its own lane, so you know which direction folks are going. Under the 4-lane section today, it's a little confusing. You're not sure if they're turning left, if they're going straight through, if they're turning right, if they're in the far lane. This kind of cleans up that intersection so you know where folks are going, and it just helps that overall safety factor at the intersection itself. Just a side note, one additional benefit to the 3-lane section.
And I'll point out also that irregardless of whether you get a traffic signal, if this stayed a 4-way stop, this intersection would be upgraded. So instead of having your the current stoplight in the middle of the intersection on wires, there would be 4 mast arms on each corner with luminaires that would extend over the lane that would, show the lights. We have the scenario in Panguitch that's very similar to this, where 89 makes a turn, and that one's been upgraded. We also have in that scenario the overhead cantilever signage preceding the intersection in both directions there, if you were interested in taking a look at that some other time. Yeah, those scenarios there. But that, just wanted to report that we will work on getting that sign, or that mast arm in that intersection upgraded, irregardless of whether it's a traffic signal or a 4-way stop condition. It doesn't change the crosswalk situation at all. People would still be, crossing, under the stop condition. Cars would have to be, versus a traffic signal would have a walk signal, would be timed for the pedestrian, and that sort of thing. Anyway, I'll be quiet.
Just looking at this drawing here, one thing that I've been noticing, and I used to hold a business right on that corner and watched all kinds of crazy things happen. But when you have a truck northbound making that right-hand turn, especially if they're a 40-foot trailer, they're cutting into that northbound lane a little bit, and then they're sweeping clear out into what is westbound but heading south. Does the extra width of the shoulder here keep most trucks from sweeping into that left turn lane if they're turning right on that intersection?
We will have to look at that in design. It improves it, but because we have those 3 lanes on the opposite side, the center line's actually shifted over a little bit. We would have to look at that. We've got some tools to use in our design to check turning radiuses for those kinds of vehicles.
Yeah, I've seen truckers there lay on the horn and wave people up because they don't realize he can't go until you get out of the way. It doesn't matter if there's a four-way stop, he's stuck until you move. And then the next one comes up in their way anyway, and he still can't move. And so,
Yeah, my suspicions are, honestly, is that northbound movement to eastbound, they will probably be straddling that line with the through and the right, so that they're out a little bit, so they can, if they won't be in that right turn pocket fully. A little bit of them will be, but they know where they need to be to get lined up, so they're not running over a car sitting in the left turn pocket to go southbound.
right.
And we may, I don't know that this takes care of that situation, but we have a similar situation in Salina.
Similar situation in Richfield.
Where Salina went from a four-way stop to a traffic signal, and there's a lot of trucks that make those turns. It hasn't been without issues, but it doesn't happen very often. Usually it's somebody that isn't paying attention. But
Those right turns are problematic in cities all over the place. Richfield here at our main intersection in town at 300 North and Main Street kind of has a similar issue. They kind of have to straddle that lane to make the right turn without getting into trouble there. So it's kind of a similar issue that you run into in many places. But it's a good point, very good point.
Well, would it be possible to make that westbound traffic have a through or a right turn, through or right, and a left turn, and just put those into two lanes and just
and give a little bit more receiving for that north to eastbound? Absolutely. That's
very good
just
point.
knowing how the traffic and landing flows. If you did a survey of everybody who's ever turned right at that intersection when they're westbound, not very many.
right.
And none of the travelers, none of the tourists are turning right there unless they're really abundantly lost. They go straight through, but they don't turn right. So it may be that you can just have a left turn and a through, and it also serves as a right. And
Well, those are good points, and I think Robert and I could evaluate that as we look at that, definitely.
well, it seems like our as far as our council is, I think the signage, personally, I feel like the signage is going to make all the difference. And the other improvements of the 3-lane, which I favor for a number of reasons, that's where I would go. But it's up to us to decide, what request we would like to make. The signage for sure, and whether we want to try to stick with the 4 lanes or go with the 3 that are being recommended, that seems to be our choice.
And I think that's the answer they're looking for tonight, is do you want to stick with the 4 lanes or go to the recommended 3 lanes?
So I forgot to say thanks for being here, gentlemen with UDOT. I don't remember your name, so thanks for being here. So I just want to clarify, because my main concern is 300 South, and I think you've given us some good options there. But I'm still concerned with this 4-way stop at Main Street, because from my experience, and I've lived here all my life, that is the most dangerous spot in town. So you would be adding these overhead signs, which I really like. There at the 2 black marks, 350 feet away. It would be westbound and southbound. And then what else would you be doing to the 4-way stop? Because if someone misses that, I can see benefits to the 3-lane travel. I can see negatives to it, but I'm just wondering right there still, the problem is that people miss the signs and then they try and keep going, or they don't see the 4-way stop at all. They don't see the stop signs at all. So they just keep going straight, which isn't the right way. And then they panic. So I'm just wondering, is there other additions that you're going to make to the 4-way stop specifically, or that you've recommended?
There is going to be, so like right there at the intersection where we're looking at that existing overhead assembly westbound view, and that arrow goes up to that black line right there, yes. That will be a mast arm that carries at least into, across that lane where it shows, maybe a little bit further. That will have 2 red beacons on that flashing. There will be one of those on each corner for each direction of travel. So those red beacons will be what is your flashing stop red to try to alert people to the stop condition. Then on that sign also would be the 2 assembly signs, that South 191 with the arrow and the Main Street. Those would be, no, not that one, on the upper one. So yeah, that one would be on that sign. And then the northbound view, those 2 signs would also be there. Again, if you wanted to take the time to do a Google Earth view, a street view of Panguitch, it's similar to what they currently have there. That's why I said, irregardless of whether it's a traffic signal or a 4-way stop, that intersection will be upgraded. There will be 4 mast arms, signal poles and mast arms across there, one on each corner with luminaires lights, which you probably already have. But as far as the safety goes for the pedestrian, the advantage of a traffic signal really is when the pedestrian hits the button to cross, they'll wait until it gives them the walk signal, and then it'll hold all of the other traffic, at least the cross traffic. It will hold them until they get across before it turns green for them. So there could be some additional delay at the intersection. However, the safety is typically improved because you don't have, just a stop and then go. They literally wait till, it'll be timed such that they get across, and then it'll give them their green for that cross traffic.
So just to clarify, would the blinking red light that's there now go away and then be replaced by, I guess, blinking red lights on each of these signs?
Yeah, yes, each of these mast arms, yes, these signal, we call them signal pole with mast arms, but it's not a signal head. It's just the 2 beacons, 2 red beacons flashing.
Okay, my question is, how big are these new flashing lights? How big would they be?
They're 12 to 14 inches in diameter.
Yep. And what's the size on the stop signs right now?
Should be probably about 12, I think. They're always bigger than what we think they are.
Yeah.
Would the stop signs coming up from the ground, would those stay there or would those go away? I mean, with the lights, and the stop signs would say.
The stop signs would stay there. If we could share, we'll show you what we had already pulled it up for Panguitch. Can we share our screen?
That would be great, actually.
While you're getting ready to pull that up, Terry Ecker, is that who you said, Jeremy?
Yeah, I have that pulled up, and I think it would be good for everyone to see that.
I believe you can share now, Robert.
Can you see my screen on yours now?
Yeah.
So this is Panguitch Main Street, and can you see these overhead? This is how it would look. These are the flashing red lights as you come up to the intersection. So at all 4 corners.
And and then there's.
I don't see anything.
Yeah, us out here, we don't see it.
All right, let's see here. Oh, no, it's wanting me to do something else. Let's try again. How about that?
Yeah.
There you go.
All right, there we go.
Can you back up?
Yeah, let me back up as we approach this intersection. Try not to make you sick here. Oh, there we go.
So I wanted to show you, so this is the overhead assembly approaching the intersection.
And sorry, can you just clarify, would this one have a flashing light or
No.
not? Okay.
So this is, as you approach the intersection, you'll have that additional signing that kind of points you to the state park and to Bluff, those directional signs as you approach on this mast arm. And then as you approach the intersection itself, if I can get it to go, oh, this thing, there we go. Oh, it's giving me headaches. It keeps let me jump out and back, sorry. We'll get it. Far left. There we go. Sorry, we'll get there. All right, dropping back down. There we go. So as you approach the intersection, you can see these mast arms, and they have the 2 flashing red lights over each corner. So that really does kind of brighten it up, and you still will have the stop signs on the side as well. So it's kind of delineated in 2 different ways so that you kind of get the message wherever you look. And you know, you mentioned, we can certainly look at the most efficient striping. You see here they've got a shared through left and then a right dedicated. We'd look at the most efficient way to get traffic through at that intersection and still let the trucks make their turning movements and whatnot. But that's overall about what it would look like.
Have you had any feedback from Pingwich? I mean, that looks really similar to us. I like the concept behind it. Have you had feedback?
They, you know, we haven't had any really much feedback, which means it's probably working. Your scenario, I mean, so where the white car is going, that's going southbound. That's actually another state route. So if they go through there, they're not in error. But if this white truck goes straight through, they're on a city street similar to yours. You know, so there's a little bit different things. The right arrow that's directly in front of us, that shoulder, swing to the right a little bit. Can you keep going? I just want to, so that shoulder, they had issues with cars pulling up on the inside because this one's striped wide to allow for trucks to make that turn. But the reality is they still swing wide and end up, in this scenario, there's 4 lanes. And in that, they take up part of that second lane on the other side when they make their right turn. But this is what you would have in the 4-way stop condition versus a traffic signal. They would prefer a traffic signal if we could ever justify it, but we haven't been able to. The traffic volumes aren't high enough here to warrant that yet.
Same situation.
Yeah, same situation.
Okay, thank you.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
You still have a question, Terry?
I do. Robert, this is Terry. My question is, if the city council were to consider the bike lane, that would not negatively impact the evaluation for the overhead school speed limit assembly, would it?
No, that's still considered part of the parking area.
Okay, perfect. So I guess while I'm talking, Mayor and Council, I've reviewed all of this, and my biggest concern is the safety of the school crossing down there on 300 South. And I'm a proponent for the 3-lane highway just to help us meet those warrants and be able to have the overhead school speed limit assembly. I think there's pros and cons, but I think the pros far outweigh the cons, considering that specific crossing for the students.
So I have a question on the 3-lane. Does research show that having just a 3-lane, does that slow down traffic? Because we do at times have trouble with people going quite fast on the main street.
It will eliminate people trying to pass others, and so that typically calms traffic in that regards. I don't know that you guys have that problem here because we have some pretty good passing opportunities approaching your community, but you know, and some straight stretches for people to get around slow-moving vehicles and but for example, in Escalante, they are extremely frustrated because when people hit their 4-lane section in town, it just becomes a raceway because people are getting around all the RVs and trying to, you know, before they get to the other end of town, they want to get ahead of everybody. So the 3-lane section really takes care of that scenario. The beauty that you guys have is you've got 4 and 5-lane sections on either end. So I think that's one of the why you don't seem to have the issue that other communities do.
Okay, thanks.
So I guess the question before the council is 3-lane or 4-lane, and if you choose 3-lane, do you want it striped as a bike lane or just left as parking? That's really the question, and I think we look for that done by motion.
Jeremy, I have a quick question for you before that. Is at that 4-way there, the road past, so up to like 100 north and then 100 west, those are our streets. Could we extend that the striping up to that block, or is that something that we couldn't do? Is that even helpful? I guess I just know that there's a lot of traffic issues there with the post office and that little strip there.
UDOT does that striping for us, even though those are our streets, for about half a block. So I think that they would extend, and I'm speaking for them, but I think they would extend that striping to the places that they stripe. We don't stripe it. So
Okay.
So I was just looking on Google Earth on what we have now, because to be honest, I've driven up there so many times, I forget what it looks like because it all just gets lost. But so we have an arm extending there now, and then we have the 4-way blinking light that I don't think anybody notices anymore. The 4-way blinking light would go away, and you would use the existing arms that are there.
No, they would be replaced with upgraded ones. I don't think those meet our current standards. So they would, I mean, these would be checked out to see, but my anticipation is that there would be four new poles with mast arms. I mean, we aren't going to replace something that's totally adequate, but we have not evaluated those. If those have been any length of time, typically structurally they have to be upgraded and, you know, improved.
So with the signage stuff, I've heard from multiple people, a couple of different highway patrolmen that, you know, they have issues with the signs on the ground, the ones that we have now. We need them upgraded, but the ones that we have now are covered by trees. And I wonder, I mean, that should be part of this discussion, is making sure that signs that are there are visible, especially coming in from the east. Those seem like those are covered up. I don't know what we can do about that for sure. Something.
Well, you'll have your big mast arm out over the road.
Well, but yeah, I mean, but if we think there's a stop sign there, going forward, it should be until it's seen. So, I mean, if it doesn't need to be seen, let's take it out.
yeah, we're constantly trimming those trees, but they just.
Do we not just take them out though? I mean, that's not what we do.
We could. That's another discussion.
Well, is it a different discussion?
We trim them way back.
I feel like that's literally this discussion. I don't know why that'd be a different one. Is that not literally what we're talking about? It is.
So my question is, the existing sign that tells you that you're traveling south on 191 or whatever, they seem very small to me, the overhead signs. So would the newer signs be bigger than that?
They would be the white on green with the green background. So they would be different, you know, in terms of the color contrast. I can't tell you whether or not they're going to be bigger than those. I'd like to say yes, they'll be bigger, but I would anticipate, I mean, they'll be big enough that probably 6-inch letters, and we can even look at upsizing them. Typically for on Main Street, we go with those, and I do not know what size your letters are on those existing signs. We recognize that those existing signs aren't very well recognized.
Mhm.
And
The new one will have the US highway symbol with the 191 in it and the arrow pointing. So it should, to me, it should be more visible and easier to follow because it will have that plaque with the route number and the arrow pointing you in the correct direction right on the mast arm.
And instead of being black and white, it'll be green. And I think that that's
correct.
very helpful.
Correct. And unfortunately, well, this request has been made by the city probably 5 years ago to upgrade the signage. But we're getting to this point that we don't just upgrade the signage. We need to really fix the situation at the four-way stop. And to me, the mast arms out like we did in Panguitch and Kanab, where we put mast arms, a block or half a block before each intersection helps, communicate to the traveling public that the road turns ahead and that they need to make that turn. There's quite a few other things. And like you mentioned, we do have signage along the side of the road, but a lot of it's obscured by some of the trees and the vegetation, which it just kind of is what it is. But even in Panguitch and Kanab, where they don't have the vegetation, we still went with the overhead signage, and it's a lot more apparent to the traveling public where they need to go.
Thank you. So I will say that I like the idea of the new mast arms, like you were just talking about, the warning and at the four-way stop. And I really think we need to do what it takes to get overhead signage at 300 West. And so even with as much heartburn as it gives me, I do support going down to the 3 lanes because of safety.
And my suggestion would be, these mast arms, which would be a huge improvement. We cut down the trees, and just, if they're in the way, they're in the way. Let's be done with it. And then ask UDOT to do what you can. And it sounds like we're all recognizing that that is an issue at 300 South, and to put something in. Because I'll throw out the example. Let's say we go to whatever scenario justifies getting that put in at 300 South. And then in 7 years or 2 years or whatever, we go back to 4 lanes. I don't think they would take that out. Is that correct, UDOT? I mean, once that overhead was in, that would stay there?
The overhead signage.
He's talking school crossing.
Oh, yeah. No, once that's approved, it's there unless your elementary school moves or something.
Yeah. So I guess if we're all saying and acknowledging, hey, regardless of the situation, that's a safety issue, because that's what started all of this, is literally all of us being worried about trying to increase the safety. So would ask, I'd like to ask you guys to try to put that in and keep the 4 lanes is such a better way to get the traffic through. And so we get the best of all worlds, I think, if we can get the overhead signage, which includes the 300 South for sure. That's probably, like Terry said, probably the most important thing here, and then keep the 4 lanes. That's my recommendation. Not go as far to make a motion to that now.
To keep 4 lanes and try for the overhead.
To keep 4 lanes and ask UDOT, and see if they can't put that in. Again, where we're all acknowledging that is a concern and a need.
I would, I can definitely see benefits to both. I like the wider, I don't know what you call them, where we're considering putting a bike lane. I like that being wider to allow for parking on the street. But I see concerns with our residents. If we just start painting 3 lanes, I think we're gonna have some people who are gonna be upset. I'm wondering if we should allow some sort of public comment on this, hold a public hearing, see if anybody will show up.
what's our, as far as UDOT is concerned, when would they like a request or recommendation from the city?
So our plan is to come through with a chip seal project, the end of May, first part of June. And it'll be fast moving. Once they're there, it'll probably take about a week and they'll be in and out. So it's coming up very quickly, so.
So we could pursue the kind of a public information thing that puts out there the information from this study that lets people know what's being evaluated and try to pool some more information from our citizenry to see how they feel about stuff.
I like that idea.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we know by the first part of May, middle to May is the very latest, so that we can have that planned and have that planned into our chip seal program.
So
We have 2 weeks that we can put the information out there and talk to people and gather, get everybody informed the best we can, get the feel of the community on it, and help us in our decision. We could have that to you in a couple of weeks.
I guess my comment would be, if we stay with the 4-lane and the same shoulder width, what guarantee can you guys from UDOT give us that you'll be looking at those arms that go across for the school zones? Because, you were saying it need to be the 11-foot shoulders. If we don't go to that, will you be able to get us those signs still?
While Robert's thinking on that, I just want to put in my 2 cents and I hear comments all the time that 4-way is more effective in getting traffic through. At the traffic volumes that Blanding has, it's 3 lanes just as effective as getting traffic through town. You have a 5-lane section still on either end where folks can pass if they need. The 3-lane will calm traffic slightly in the middle of town so that you've got safer speeds, it's safer for pedestrians all the way through town. I like it for the safety. Like I say, my recommendation is the 3-lane is a safer option all the way around. It gives you a more small town feel and more comfort in town. Now, again, that's like I say, that we're looking for the city's recommendation. I just want to put my recommendation in from UDOT standpoint, from a highway standpoint and a safety standpoint. It will move the traffic just as efficiently, but you get all the added safety benefits and the safer parking benefits.
So in the report on page 16, it does address the overhead school assembly. It does not, if that changes to 12 feet, it does not guarantee that we're still short point wise. He identifies how we can possibly qualify for it, but it would take a little bit of work. I anticipate it would get approved. I'll stop short on saying it will get approved. I think we're optimistic that we can get it approved, especially with the 12-foot shoulder. But again, there's
implicit in that then is that if we left it at 4 lanes, the answer for the overhead arms at the school crossing is almost for sure no.
Well, it's less. It's definitely less. We would attempt to. I mean, I was prepared to argue for that in the 4-lane scenario, and am still prepared to support the city's request, but it's a little more challenging.
Yeah. I think from our standpoint, I hope you don't get the impression that we're holding you hostage with the 3-lane solution. We're still going to argue and try and do what's best to improve safety for the town. I think Robert and I agree that we like the 3-lane section. We think for Blanding, it would really improve the feel as you drive through that center part of town. But that said, we're still going to work with the town to come with these other recommendations to try and make things safer.
Right.
Okay, so let's push the information out to the public and have this part of our next council meeting 2 weeks with the open. With the public hearing section specifically, if anybody wants to come and comment on it.
And I'll just say, Mayor, too, I'm leaning towards a 3-lane, but it's because I've had a chance to think about it for a while and drive it and consider it. But I really would like to hear, but I've also heard people who are not for it at all. And I'd like them to have a chance to at least speak. And even if they don't, we know that we offered them the opportunity. So I'm leaning towards voting for a 3-way, but I'm also open to sticking with a 4-way if there's benefits to that as well. So.
Well, I personally probably am leaning towards the 3-lane, the bigger shoulders, but let the people say what they need to say.
How do you anticipate a public hearing?
Well, yeah.